What's up, Purists? Where are we on 1989 number 50? I've done a few things and let's talk about that. So this car had been sitting for a while. If you stay tuned in the video for a card that will talking the details of what this car is and where it came from. It is owned by a family. It is not our car. It is a client's car. So we're trying to take good care and restarting it because it's been sitting for so long. And I think there's a lot of people out there that will just send it, as they say. Just throw some gas in it, actually siphon the old gas out, throw new gas in it, maybe change the oil and flip the key. So I don't know that, I'm just not one to do that, especially on a car that's a family heirloom, and they just take good care in trying to get the car started without having to rebuild the motor, things like that. So what we've done, we went through, and if you watched the video of the car, it had a lot of debris in it from sitting, so we vacuumed all of that out. And then once that was out, we actually found a nice day. I guess it was back in early January. The weather was good. Took it outside and sprayed it off and got it washed down for probably the first time it's actually had clean water hit it in a long time. So we washed it and just kind of took inventory on the paint, which areas we're going to paint, because we're not going to paint the whole car. We're only going to paint parts of it because, well, there's just no need to paint the whole thing. Some of the stuff is still really nice, and the roof is probably the worst part. So anyways, we're going to paint only certain parts of it. Stay tuned for that. We'll walk you through the process when we do that. I've got some tips and tricks that I want to show you on the car before it goes to paint. Things that, well, I've experienced myself with cars that there's a certain approach you can take to correct things without having to repaint the whole thing. So this would be a good car to show you that on. But the motor itself, I was concerned that the cylinders, the rings had rusted a little bit into the cylinder walls, and with it sitting outside, it was parked next to the garage. It was not out in the field or anything like that. It was actually parked next to the house. So that's good. And it was in an area where there's not a whole lot of moisture. It's out of California, so that's also good. But the rings can seat against the cylinder walls with just a little bit of rust. And I really just did not want to take a risk of throwing a wrench on the crank and just pulling it. So I did the old school trick. I guess it's one that's been around a while. A lot of people put automatic transmission fluid in it, but I just grabbed some Marvel Mystery Oil, and I ordered a carburetor squirter that you would use to test carburetors on old cars. It's got the little curved tip. Put a hose on it, and then took my time after removing the spark plugs and just kind of squeezed one cylinder at a time, a little bit of that Marvel Mystery Oil in it, and I let it sit. Let it sit for probably a week. And well, if you haven't recognized behind me, this is the 93 Cobra intake. So the drivetrain in this vehicle, engine and transmission, are from a 93 Cobra. Don't worry, the car that it came from was totaled and crushed. It's no longer around, and it is definitely a 93 Cobra transmission. I've checked the numbers on it at the request of someone. They asked if it was actually had that in it. So yes, it has 93 Cobra engine and transmission in it with fairly low miles. According to the owners, it only had 30,000 miles or so on it. So the motor's in really good shape for the mileage. We just don't want to run a risk of, messing the cylinder walls up or causing damage to the rings or the cylinder walls, either one. So after it's sitting for a week, I decided to actually throw a wrench on the crank and I turned it. It didn't have to break free because it was all great. It was smooth as silk. I can move it so easily, which it just has such a good feeling. So at this point, the motor itself, there's no issues inside the cylinders from what I could tell. The next step that we took is that, well, we're going to go through the fuel system. Before I did that, I actually removed the distributor, and there's a way to do that. Here, let's walk through that, what I did. I took a Sharpie and I actually marked the end of the rotor, and then I put a little line on what I call it the bell. I guess it holds the cap down. So I put a little line on that, and if you take the line from the rotor and put a little line on that aligns with the bell, that tells you where that needs to align when you reinstall it, as long as you don't turn the motor over while it's out. So I did that, and then I also marked the bottom of the, I guess it's where it goes in, it's the seat, I guess for lack of a better way of saying it, of the distributor where the clamp holds. So I just took and put marks on either side of it. So that's one way to do that. I've actually done that in an emergency at like 3 a.m. In a remote area with no cell service on that car. Actually, I took it and put the distributor in and did it just like that without having to do anything else. I just needed a 1/2 inch socket and then a little screwdriver to remove the cap and move it to the new distributor because it was marked. Put it back in, it fired right up. Anyways, I'm digressing. So the easy way to remove the distributor is mark the rotor, mark the little bell that holds the cap, and that gives you the alignment. And then if you mark where the clamp is down on the engine, that tells you where it can be clocked. And as long as you align that rotor to that one line, you put them back together, you should be good. You may need to adjust a little bit to fine tune it, but that's one way to remove that. So the reason I removed it is because of this. Thanks to a good buddy of mine, Joe, I have a tool. This is a distributor that doesn't have a gear on it. And I can actually put a bit in this from a drill and turn it, and I can turn and crank that over and actually put oil pressure through the motor. That's the next thing on the list, is I'm going to actually fill it with fresh oil. I did drain the oil out of it, it was actually really nice in bronze. It was not black. That's a really good thing. So all signs are pointing to a really good, healthy motor. And that's next, is we're going to put oil in it and we'll spin it up and just get oil back through the motor. When I did touch it with the wrench and move it, I only moved it about 90 degrees because I wanted to just move the pistons up and down through that area where they had been sitting for so long. The next thing that we're going to do is remove the gas tank. We've already removed the rear air dam. And the reason I removed the rear air dam is because this part right here goes all the way up to the gas tank. And when you remove the gas tank, it will actually push this down and it can do damage to the paint on this side here. So I wanted to take real good care in making sure that I don't damage this, because we don't need to repaint this. We just need to actually buff it up and give it a little more luster and clean obviously this out. We vacuumed it out. There was a lot of debris which gets lodged in here from being thrown back from the tires. Same in here underneath all of those. It's still pretty nasty, as you can see, but we'll wash it and make it like it's almost new. But that's why I removed the air dam in the back, is so that I could drop the gas tank easily. And the rear bumper is going to have to be painted. It's just well, it's got a tear in it from what looks like a little parallel parking incident, probably by someone who was careless in a college parking lot. I'm not going to say the owner, I'm going to say it's somebody else that probably bumped into the car. It's very typical, but the car itself is really nice and was well taken care of, and that's a good thing. So I'm excited that we've not found any major issues yet, but we are going to take the gas tank down. The gas, we did siphon out of it. It was a little bit orange, which leads me to believe there was some rust inside of it. And so we're probably gonna, well, we're just gonna have to look at the gas tank. My concern with the gas tank is if the baffle, if there is rust in it, it could probably be cleaned out, but the fuel pump baffle that holds gas around the fuel pump pickup, don't want that to come loose down the road. And so we may have to replace the tank altogether. I don't know yet, but we're going to get to that. The other thing we'll do is we'll blow out the fuel lines, just make sure there's nothing in them. And at that point, hopefully we can turn the key and see if it fires up. I got a feeling it's going to blow a bunch of stuff out of the mufflers, which is going to be a good time. So once we get it running, then we're probably going to tear all of the trim off of it and try to get it to the paint shop so we can paint portions of it and then get it all back together. So stay tuned for more on this thing. It's exciting. It's actually a really nice car. But as I always say, whether you're driving them or restoring them, always enjoy them. Peace.